Welcome to the Rotary Club of Seattle. It's so good to see all your smiling faces today. We're the fourth oldest, one of the biggest Rotary clubs in the world, and has anybody meditated in this room? Show of hands. Who's meditated? Whoa! Who has not meditated? Okay. If you've never meditated before, we will be meditating a little bit later. But it's all to become better leaders in business and better leaders at home as well. So it's going to be a great program with Dr. Astrid Pujari coming up. We've got a new member coming up today. We've got some table talk. We're going to learn a little bit more about each other. That's all coming up. If you're joining us for the first time today, we start our programs with inspiration and song. Carolyn Hojiboom is here for the invocation. After that, Linda Ruff and Freeman Fong will lead us in song. Carolyn, come on up.
So given today's subject matter and the background of our speaker, this is a perfect meeting for me to give the invocation, as being mindful has had a big impact on my journey in this life. In June of 2000, I was diagnosed with stage 4 ovarian cancer. Dr. Smith, who was the oncologist who did my surgery, told John and I that I could go through chemo, but he really recommended that I go home and do whatever I wanted to do for my last 3 months. A dear friend introduced me to Dr. Bernie Siegel's writings. If you've had anything to do with cancer, you know that name. He was a practicing oncologist who observed that patients who survived had some very similar characteristics. I related to many of them. My friend also introduced me to meditation and visualization. There were no cancer alliances that were around, and I built my own team, and I told them, because they were from the Western and the Eastern, that they needed to work together and that they would need to be communicating. It included an oncologist, not Dr. Smith, a naturopath, a dietitian, a masseuse, and a yoga instructor. I also told them that I was not done with this journey yet, and I would let them know when I was. I learned these things in this journey. Our bodies want to be whole in both body, mind, and spirit. We have the tools to make this happen, all contained in us. I used my team to help me with this. I visualized walking through my body daily to see how it was doing, and when I had chemo treatment, I visualized it going through my body and guided it to do what it needed to get done. I meditated on making my body whole. I hope I'm sharing this experience because I hope it will inspire you to be mindful of your body, mind, and spirit. You can focus on the direction you want it to go. 18 years later, I'm still not done, and I continue these practices today.
I first met Dr. Astrid Pujari, I don't know, maybe 10, 12 years ago, and it was really a profound experience for me because I could tell that she was not like most people that I knew. And today you'll find out why. And it's all about mindfulness. And if you think about it, most of us have gone through our entire lives, for lack of a better term, unconsciously. Somebody cuts us off in traffic, we yell, we get mad, we may gesture. A coworker may talk to us at work in a way that offends us. My point is, we kind of go up throughout the day, not really conscious of how we're thinking, why we're thinking, what we're thinking about. We just react from the time we get up until the time we go to bed. And it might be a good day based on how other people treated us that day, or it might be a bad day based on how other people treated us that day. Today is all about becoming aware. aware that we actually do control every single thought that comes in between our ears. That's ours. We created the thought, we can control the thought, and we can control the actions that that thought can bring. So what I found fascinating about mindfulness, and I don't know how many of you know Ray Hecox, former GM of King Television. Ray is a brilliant man, and he was very much into mindfulness in the way that he managed. I never ever saw him yell at anyone. I never ever saw him treat someone with disrespect. Even if people got in his face, he would just calmly diffuse the situation by just how he handled the situation. And it all comes down to mindfulness. And Dr. Pujari has been practicing at her own practice for about 13 years. Carolyn, thank you for sharing that opening talk about stage 4 ovarian cancer, and you beat it based on these principles. That's amazing. Dr. Pujari helps cancer patients, teaches classes for free to get them to understand the holistic approach of mind-body healing. So I'm not going to say much more. I'm just going to let her take over and teach us today. So please welcome Dr. Astrid Pujari.
Hello. Enjoying lunch? Okay, so today we're going to talk about mindfulness and leadership, as you probably figured out. Hopefully, let's see if the slides are up. Okay, so mindfulness and leadership, all of you are in some kind of leadership role, I imagine. And I was actually, in preparation for this talk, I was looking at Forbes magazine, which actually, to be honest, was a little overwhelming in terms of the number of key leadership steps that they thought people needed to do. But I wanted to review with you some of what they thought were key skills that leaders need to be good leaders, going back to Mark's point. And so here's some of the key, apparently the key things people need to focus on. One is self-management, so the ability to regulate your time, attention, and emotions, have self-discipline without being rigid. Secondly, strategic vision, so having a flexible mindset and the ability to kind of think about long-term planning, creative solutions. Positive personal interactions, going back to your point about, that leader. So the importance of compassion. I know the Rotary Club is very much an organization that I think of as focused on compassion. And dealing with negative outcomes and issues. So again, when someone's in your face, well, how do I respond to that in a way that actually empowers both of us? And maintaining a positive outlook and actually using that as a mechanism for transformation rather than sort of sinking us down into reaction. And also work-life balance. So these are things that Forbes magazine thought were important for leaders, for good leaders to pursue. And I put them here in a more simple way, just as kind of bullet points. What I'd imagine, I was thinking about this for all of you, I'd imagine probably a lot of you, just the fact that you're here, you belong to the Rotary Club, you're, downtown, I'd imagine probably a lot of you have been to a lot of workshops and have probably tried to cultivate these skills in yourself without us needing to even talk about it. So I'm going to assume, therefore, that actually a lot of you already have these skills, or you're working on them, or maybe you were just blessed with them from a young age. What I wonder, and so for me, it's not a question of whether you have these skills. My question is really, how easy is it to apply what you know when you're stressed out, right? Because I know for myself, when let's say I get in an argument with my spouse, right? I might know a lot of stuff, but it can be really hard to do in the moment. Has anyone had that experience? Okay. Well, or with your kid or anybody where, you have a real desire and you care, right? So the issue isn't, do you have these skills? I think the issue is why is it that when we get stressed out, it's so hard to apply what we know? So actually, as it turns out, I'm an internist by training. I was just sharing with somebody, I've basically a double board degree in internal medicine and integrative medicine. But in medicine, we talk about why this is, meaning it's not just that your fault that it's hard to do these things under stress. There's actually good medical reasons for this. So I'd like to outline a little bit of that. First of all, to help us get compassion for ourselves. And secondly, also to help us problem solve, honestly, to help us get ideas for what we can do. So we're going to go through just some of the physiology of stress and actually what happens to us physically, like medically speaking, for a moment, just so we can understand. So stress from our body's point of view, not from a mental and emotional, psychological, you like the little baby? Stress is basically a fear response to life. So physiologically speaking, physically speaking, bodily speaking, stress is a fear response to life. That's what it is, okay? And actually, I'm sure a lot of you have heard of the fight or flight response, right? Okay, the fight or flight response is a basically very, very well categorized set of different physiologic responses that we know happen when somebody gets stressed. I mean, it's very, very well categorized. I mean, it's been present, since the 1950s, we've known this. Maybe even the 1940s, actually. So basically, with fight or flight, people's heart rate goes up. So fight or flight basically is what the physiologic responses that happen in response to stress, all right? So first, the heart rate goes up, blood pressure goes up. There's an increase in what people in lay terms often call adrenaline. So when I teach classes for lay people, a lot of times they'll refer to it as adrenaline. In medicine, we often call it norepinephrine or catecholamines or epinephrine, something like that. But it doesn't matter. Adrenaline works really well. And actually, if any of you have heard of somebody who's taken methamphetamines or cocaine, all of those effects that happen from those drugs are related to basically mimicking adrenaline. So you can kind of think, oh, that's what it does. It raises my heart rate, raises my blood pressure, causes people to be really anxious, hyper alert, jittery, things like that. And then has anyone heard of cortisol? A lot of people now know about cortisol. Okay, so cortisol basically is like the drug prednisone. So if you know anyone who's been on prednisone, it looks like we have a couple of people who know about that. Prednisone, if you know about the side effects of that medication, it causes people to gain weight, they get diabetes, they get high blood pressure. It can also cause a lot of mood disturbances, so depression and anxiety. So when we have stress, this cortisol goes up naturally in the body, and that's why stress causes these changes, okay? So that's why if people get chronically stressed, they can get high blood pressure. They can get, some of these physiologic symptoms. Also, stress increases pro-inflammatory chemicals, and in medicine now we're talking so much about the role of inflammation with diseases. So inflammation in cancer, inflammation in diabetes, inflammation in heart disease, and how do we lower that? Arthritis, the list goes on, autoimmune diseases. So all of these things are relevant also with stress. And then there's a decrease in immune function. Actually, at one point I was doing a lecture, I remember I think it was for Fox News. They were sponsoring the Seattle Marathon. And, with a marathon, so I was down there at the Seattle Marathon doing a lecture. And if somebody runs a marathon, actually, your immune system gets suppressed for about 72 hours. I don't know if people know that, but it goes down. And actually, stress kind of does the same thing. It lowers our immune system for a period of time. Because if you think about it, a marathon's a stress. It's a physiologic stress. And then also, these hormones can actually decrease digestion. So people will notice irritable bowel, things like that will happen. And increase in muscle tension. I have a lot of people tell me, gosh, my neck is tight, my back is tight when I get stressed. Well, that's why. All right? So what a lot of people know, sort of these categorized responses that happen with stress. What you may not be aware of, and I think is really relevant to leadership, a lot of you are in leadership roles, or maybe all of you are in leadership roles. Oh, one thing I did mention, it doesn't matter what the cause of stress is. So going back to your point, is that it doesn't matter if it's traffic, somebody yelling at you, a big inbox, your own inner critic. Your body actually I didn't make your bodies, but we can just say what the facts are. Like, it doesn't matter what causes it. If there's stress, it ends up in this physiologic set of responses, okay? So your body can't tell the difference. It doesn't know it's not a tiger, because that's really what this was all designed for, right? It was a tiger. But now it's, a big email list, right? Something like that. Okay, so going to our next point is actually something a lot of people don't know about that I think is really relevant to leaders is actually that stress impairs our ability to think creatively and see the big picture. And as we were talking about from Forbes magazine, a lot of that list requires that ability. Would you guys agree with that? I mean, to be able to see the big picture so you don't just react in the short term. Now, why is this? And this is something, again, a lot of people may not know, but I'm going to simplify this, so if any of you are neurologists in the room, forgive me in advance, but this is really just the big picture. But we basically have three main areas of the brain. So you can see them here. We have the cerebral cortex, we have the limbic system, and we have the brainstem. And they're illustrated here. The brainstem's in red, the limbic system has all these different colors in it, and then you've got the cerebral cortex there in sort of grayish pink. The brainstem is basically responsible for just like your basic functions. So keeping your heart beating, keeping your breath going. The limbic system is actually the main place responsible for fight or flight. And actually, as you can see, there's a lot of different parts of the brain that are in the limbic system, but the main one responsible for fight or flight is the amygdala. It's a little round area in the brain. And then the cerebral cortex is sort of what in some ways distinguishes us from other animals, is that we have this ability to have higher level thinking, organization, okay? So now I want to give you guys an example. I want to just imagine in your minds for a second that all of a sudden, right in front of you, coming towards you, let's say right here, okay, is this big old fat snake, okay? Or we can make up anything that would scare you, all right? So let's just say there's a big old snake coming towards you, okay? Now we're going to illustrate how we use these, literally what happens in our brains, because this is all relevant actually to how we react in leadership. So here's the snake coming. Let's pretend the snake's coming towards you, okay, whoever it is. The first thing that happens actually is people will probably, most of you, if a snake suddenly appeared here, would immediately react by running away or getting on your chair or doing something. You wouldn't even have to think about it. 1 second, right? It would be an immediate response. How does that happen? Well, it turns out our limbic system helps that to happen. So it allows an instantaneous response. You've got a very fast, so from your eyes, you've got a very fast pathway that goes straight to the limbic system, to the amygdala, registers what's going on, all in nanoseconds, okay? And quickly activates your muscle system, your heart rate, your breath, everything, to basically get you to jump away or jump back. Interestingly, the other thing that it'll do, and I think this is also important as leaders, is it will actually also generate a memory in your mind that is associated with that fear. So the next time you come to the Rotary Club meeting, you'll be like, I wonder if there's a snake. And you won't be as easy about coming into the room. Does that make sense? Because it's trying to protect you. Are you guys, any questions about that? Okay, so this is practically instantaneous. We don't think about it, it just happens, and it's designed to protect us. Meanwhile, okay, in the background here, we actually, from the snake, we have a slower reflex. And the slower reflex is, we're seeing the snake, but in slow time, we're getting tons of detail. Oh, the snake is orange and black. Oh, the snake is moving right to left. Oh, the snake's tongue is snaking in and out. Whatever that lot of detailed information. Oh, the air is cold. Lots of information goes on a slower pathway, and it actually goes to our cerebral cortex, which is, again, our higher level order of thinking. The reason that happens is because our bodies are designed so that in the long term, we can have a long-term plan for how to deal with this issue, okay? So now I have a question for you. Actually, let's go through this one more time. Actually, the main part of the cortex that is involved in this is called the prefrontal cortex, meaning it's in the front here in the orange. So again, it intelligently guides our thought. It's a slower reflex, but it intelligently guides emotions and actions. It views the bigger picture. It's important for what we call executive function, which I think is appropriately named, that long-term view, strategic planning, creative thinking. It focuses on higher level goals and decreases premature conclusions or jumping to categorizations and routine ways of thinking. Okay? So now, question for you. All right, actually, one more thing. So our limbic system, again, immediate fight or flight, assess threat versus trust. Prefrontal cortex looks at the big picture view, regulates our system, our emotions, I should say, and our thinking, and focuses on long-term goals. Which one, all right, we're going to do a little test here, quiz. Which one would you guys rather be functioning from at work? Okay, A, limbic system, B, cerebral cortex. Okay, well, a lot of people are understandably probably choosing their cerebral cortex. Okay, so as it turns out, if we want to do that, just like if I want to learn to play piano, my son plays a lot of jazz, so I hear a lot of piano, so it always comes up as an example. If I want to learn to play piano well, I have to practice, right? If we want to use our cerebral cortex, we actually have to practice. And that is actually a skill that is worth learning. And actually, mindfulness, that's exactly what it does, or meditation. So there's whole textbooks on this, which I have read. You might be bored by, I find really interesting. But basically, what I'd like to share with you is that there's actually, as it turns out, a pathway in our brain that connects the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala. Literally a pathway. That pathway can be underdeveloped or well-developed. Underdeveloped, well-developed, okay? And you have the ability to develop that the same way practicing piano helps you to become a better piano player. Mindfulness develops that pathway. And this is very well, I mean, I could bore you with a lot of studies on this, which I do at medical conference. But basically, meditation and mindfulness all help you to develop that pathway. So you're not in reactive mode and you're more in creative mode. So here's some of the studies on meditation, and I tried to summarize it kind of quickly because I wanted to give you guys actual real-time practice. So meditation and mindfulness have been shown to develop the areas responsible for attention, meaning the prefrontal cortex in the brain. It strengthens the connection between the limbic system and the cortex. The more we do it, meaning the more we practice, the better we get. And it helps increase perspective taking, which obviously is important for strategic planning. It helps promote recognition of what's important and what isn't. So that obviously helps with self-management, one of those key leadership skills in Forbes magazine. It puts emotions into context. Actually, very interestingly, there's studies, which I didn't put in here, but sometimes they do, that actually when people practice certain kinds of meditation that are focused on compassion, it will literally grow the areas in the brain that help with empathy. So you have the ability to influence these things, you know. And actually even doing what you're doing grows those areas in your brain. So being part of Rotary Club actually will grow that. But I want to share with you, we know now from neuroplasticity that those areas of the brain do change. And they change with our influence, meaning our practice. And then it improves our sense of well-being and physical health and trains the brain to react differently to stress. So what I find very helpful about all of this is very empowering, meaning I can do something for how I react. I can do something to change the way I react to any kind of stressful thing or negative thing at work. The other thing I'd like to share with you is the more you develop this, the better your health will be. Actually, to be honest, I didn't put this up here, but it's been shown to actually even help with aging and telomeres, for those of you who've looked at aging and telomeres. But it also, like, there's big National Institutes of Health studies on mindfulness and meditation and blood pressure, heart disease, enormous amount of studies on cancer and the side effects of cancer treatment, anxiety, depression, ADHD. I spent a lot of time teaching people these kind of techniques when they have those different issues. I'm speaking physically, so it's not just mental and in your head. It's actually, these are physical benefits. All right, so the two key things that you need to know, because we're going to actually practice, is there's two key things to do, basically, when you're practicing this technique. One is you want to take some time to just physically relax, because it actually helps the limbic system to relax when you do that, okay? And we're gonna actually literally practice this, so you walk out of here and hopefully you have a tool. I'm very into learning and not just talking about it, okay? For better or for worse. And then the second is, practicing focusing on something, whether it's our breath, a word. There's a lot of different techniques that we could go through, but today we'll practice one type of focusing. Okay? So those are the two key elements to actually achieving in practical reality what we have just shared in terms of brain chemistry, brain changes. Any questions on that before we practice? Yeah? Okay. You want to practice? All right. All right, let's practice. That's the most important part, right? Okay, so, oh, great. I got a chair. It's funny, because even at medical conferences, I use a chair because you guys are all on a chair, so I have to be on a chair. Okay, so first what we're going to do is we're going to do some breathing exercises. So if you guys can sit up straight, and I'm gonna be holding my mic, so but we're going to do some breathing exercises again. The first step of this is just helping our bodies to relax, okay? So literally, this is all we're doing. It's not sophisticated. And also, what I like to tell people is, if you feel uncomfortable, if you don't want to do it, if for whatever reason in any way it's not your thing, please, this is only an opportunity. You never, in my opinion, you don't have to do this. So please, if you feel uncomfortable, just stop and take a break, okay? All right. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to start by slouching, and we're going to put our feet flat on the floor, and we're going to close our eyes, but I'd like you to look at me for a sec so you know what we're doing, okay? So we're going to slouch, and then as we breathe, we're going to breathe up like this, and then breathe out. So it's going to look like this. And through, forgive me, it's all through our nose. All this is through our nose, okay? All right. So it goes like this. Keep going. Deep breaths. Move your spine. And relax. And just with your eyes closed, just relax for a moment. Okay, next one, our hands are on our hips, and we're going to do the same motion. So we're slouched, and then we breathe up, and then breathe back down through our nose. And remember, we're going to do big motions if we can. So it's going to look like this. Keep going. And just relaxing. Okay, next one, our hands are on our shoulders. So, and then we're going to breathe to the right. So you're breathing in through your nose, turning to the right, breathing out, turning to the left with your eyes closed, but breathing in. So it's going to look like this. And relaxing. Okay, so next one we're going to be our hands on our shoulders, and now we're going to turn the other way, breathe in, other way, breathe out. And relaxing. Okay, next one we're going to actually hold our hands at bear grip at our throat. And as we breathe in, we're going to go like this. And we're actually going to imagine our spine's like toothpaste and we're squeezing it up. So it's just in your imagination. So it's going to look like this with your eyes closed. So you're breathing up and then down at your own pace. And just relaxing. Okay, next one, our hands are above our head like this. And we're going to breathe in and out through our nose. And I'm going to imagine both my hands are above my head. So it's going to sound like this through your nose. But if you can't do it that fast, it's okay. Just breathe in and out through your nose using your belly. Blowing out all your air. Deep breath in. Hold your breath. And then slowly relax your arms while breathing out through your nose. And just relaxing for a moment. So now we're just going to blow out all our air, blow it all out through your nose. Deep breath in. Hold your breath. Tighten all the muscles of your body. Tight, 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 tight. Hold and relax. One more time, blowing out all our air. Deep breath in. Just hold your breath. And slowly out through your nose. Slow. Now, keeping your eyes closed, just focus on your breath coming in and out of your nose. And as you breathe in, imagine you're breathing in peace. And you can imagine that as a light, as a color. You can imagine that as just the breath. You can imagine you're breathing in the word. Just breathe in peace. And on your exhale, just breathe it out. So on your inhale, you're breathing in peace. And breathing out. Inhale, peace. And breathing out. Breathing in peace. And breathing out. Just bringing your mind gently to peace. And breathing out. And just focusing on peace. And breathing out. Breathing in peace. And breathing out. Breathing in peace. And breathing out. Just taking a moment now to just be grateful to you. Just be grateful to you for a moment, for your life, for taking this moment to be kind to your own self. Thank you. So who feels different? Anybody? Yeah, a few people feel different. Yeah. So that's how you do it. That's one of the ways you can practice. So again, we practice relax, then we practice focus. So that's simple. Any questions? Yes, ma'am. Not necessarily, no. That hasn't really been looked at that I'm aware of. Oh, forgive me. Yes. The question is, does the amygdala different between men and female? There are some differences between fight or flight response a little bit, but in general, mindfulness has been shown to be effective for both men and women, regardless of gender. Yes.
Fabulous.
Oh.
What's the benefit of breathing through the nose versus the mouth?
Well, this goes, okay. Oh, did everyone hear the question? I'm realizing now there's a mic. So the difference between breathing through the nose and the mouth. This now goes into more of like Indian philosophy or different meditation philosophies, but the mouth generally is considered more cooling, and for deeper relaxation, sometimes the nose is easier, and especially like when I'm trying to for all of you, you know, you've just been at work, you're kind of more up, it'll bring you down easier than the mouth. Mouth will cool, but these are like subtle things that are more in the Indian philosophy realm than necessarily that there's proof. Is that answering your question? I know it's a little vague, but yeah.
So help us understand, so if we meditate and learn how to take control of our minds, and then that stressful situation comes at us, is it the physical changes that we've created in the brain that allow us to detach from that, or is it the fact that we've taken control of our thoughts that allows us to better cope with stress?
So basically, let's go back to that example of a stressful event. What will happen as you meditate actually is your prefrontal cortex will get more and more strong. And because of that, it'll have the ability to regulate the fight or flight response. So it doesn't mean you'll eliminate the fight or flight response, because that's still important for life. But it'll say to the amygdala, you can do this, you can't do that, and it'll kick in faster. So you have more ability to think creatively on the spot rather than in being in reactive mode and then having to sort of retrospectively do it. So prefrontal cortex, you can kind of look at it as the CEO of your brain. It sort of takes everybody in the boardroom and says, we're going this way, this is the mission, these are our values, we're going to stick with this. This is the mission, these are our values, we're going to stick with this. And it doesn't allow the amygdala to just do whatever it wants, which a lot of times for humans, as we know, can just end up doing whatever it wants, but it doesn't really give us a long-term solution to our problems.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Let's
thank you.
thank Dr. Pujari.